looking back, like who would you change anything in your life? I don't know, particularly would you like go to grad school, pursue a PhD, or there's like other paths you would go?
I think I probably would still go to grad school. Actually, for all this emphasis on new, team-based research structures and FROs and large projects and stuff, I think that there is something kind of irreplaceable about an environment that provides for like deep mentoring and thought transfer. Like the ideal PhD, right? You're basically mind cloning with variation, an advisor who's like incentivized to like help you develop like a new pattern of thought that like they might be one of only 5 people in the world that can like have that pattern of thought, or only one person in the world. So, and in a weird way, like the church lab, although this more like distributed process of hundreds of people versus like hours and hours at the whiteboard with George, I feel like I incepted like some different culture or like way of seeing the world. So I'm actually like very pro getting PhDs, and also very pro people just like mucking around in the lab and like trying stuff. We see a lot of people who are like really young students and they're like, I want to get involved in meta science and I want to get involved in creating FROs or companies, and that's really new, exciting thing. But it's kind of like, yeah, that undergrad like kind of needs to like go and like learn physics before they're going to be able to like, even if they don't contribute to the Hubble Space Telescope, they might be the astronomer that uses the Hubble Space Telescope, and they might go in some other field. So I'm actually pretty pro PhDs, with all the problems that the PIs are facing about how they get grant funding in the current system and all that stuff to maintain.
How would you, if you were getting into science today, if you're 20, how would you strategize? Like, which field? Like, how do you get to the edge of a field? Like, which field actually is kind of like gonna have some movement versus others? And
it's kind of silly, but I think the physics major was still great. It's a really great combination of formal and mathematical and abstract with kind of concrete, and how does it actually ground out in the physical world. So I've talked to Ed Boyden a lot about this too, but sort of training that combines some amount of like theoretical work and some amount of more like empirical work. Like sometimes you see pure mathematicians who come into the bio lab and they're just like, they don't understand the kind of logic of like how discoveries are made in the bio lab. And sometimes you see people who are biologists who sort of don't have this like abstract framework of like understanding physics or chemistry or computer science. And so you have some training in the more empirical field that's like fundamentally just like about throughput of experiments and quality of experiments. And you have some amount of, and like a lot of like weird hands-on illegible stuff, tacit knowledge. And you have some training in like really analytical fields, math, physics, computer science. I think that can be really powerful as a combination for getting started in like our current world still. So I probably would still be pro like doing the physics major, and then maybe taking some biolab classes or stuff like that, doing some research.
Just one last question before we wrap up here. So you must, the same way that like physicists will get a lot of like emails with great ideas about like theories of everything, you must get a lot of emails with great ideas for FROs, right? So what makes a good, like if somebody's thinking about writing you an email for, I have a great idea for a FRO, what is a good idea for a FRO versus a naive idea for a FRO?
I think we want you to understand the context in the field of what is sort of what is going to happen in the field as a result of lots of great work, but with the existing structures versus what counterfactually actually really needs the FRO. So we get some of these emails that are like, I have a project. It's just my project. It should be a FRO because I can't get funding for it. That's not really right. We get some that are things that seem like they're kind of already happening. We get some that seem like they're just like not very important if you solve them. But if you're working on something like really important, the area is really important. The knowledge you would get out is really important. And we want to show that you can sort of work on carving out the FRO-shaped problem. Here's what the academic labs are going to do if the FRO is actually produced. Here's the work that actually needs to live in the FRO. Would this be better as a consortium? And we can help people to some extent with thinking through this and talking through this. But like, we get a lot of things that seem more like initiatives or high-level goals or something being broadly important, or kind of boil the ocean versus like the FRO will make this very specific tool system or data set. This is why I couldn't do that, even if I had a well-funded consortium of research groups in the existing institutions. Because a lot of things can be done in the existing institutions, right? So
it's in the style of like, we want to take 100,000 rats and robotically slice all of them, and then this data set will enable.
Yeah. And it's like, well, tell me, are you sure you couldn't do the 100,000 robotic slicing machines in the academic lab? It depends, right? If it's a computer simulation, you could maybe just do that in the academic lab. If it's C. elegans, maybe you could do that in the academic lab. If it's really mice and you really need the connectome of everyone, now we have something that's like impossible, or we can't do it yet. Okay, what's the right shape and size where you actually do need that 20 or 30 person cross-functional team? Why do you need that team as opposed to another team? So getting the FRO shape right is part of it, and part of it is, are we targeting these like sufficiently fundamental gaps? We also see a lot of things that maybe look like they're ultimately aiming to make a commercial product or service, and so really the question is how to like do this as a startup versus just assuming that this is a FRO. So we also don't want things that are just like bad startups. We want things that are bad startups because they create public goods that are highly catalytic to science but not investable. Not bad startups because they're just like startups but on the lower end of startups, right?